I think we've got quorum. There are 40 odd people. So in the interest of time, I guess we should kick off.
Yes.
And I've started the recording as well.
Okay, so firstly, thank you everyone for joining this session. I mean, I think that this is really exciting for multiple reasons. You know, at the beginning of the year, when we were looking at our Google partnership, we had prioritized commerce because we wanted to make sure that we are at the cutting edge of everything that we're doing in this space. And you know what you're seeing today, actually, you all are part of history because this is the first ever that's being done by Google anywhere in the world. And hence, I think this is exciting because we're getting first access to it. And I think we can take a lot out of it, right? Because this will span over 9 weeks and it's really modular in the way it's been designed. With no further delay, I do want to thank firstly Jigar, Rehan, and the entire Google team for pulling this together and giving us the opportunity first to drive this. And over to you guys, because we're excited to be here.
Thank you, Sapna. And thank you everyone for taking out the time and joining this program. As Sapna mentioned, this is the first time we are trialing this at a global level. So thank you so much for your partnership on this. I'm Rehan, and I am the regional lead for our retail ads and commerce solutions here in APAC. And over the next couple of minutes, I would like to basically set the context of why we are here, and then showcase the structure of the program. And then I'll give it to Alan to basically introduce himself and Jigar to introduce himself. But yeah, then Alan would be presenting the content today. So if we can go to the previous slide, Alan. Yes. So yeah, as we all know, over the last 1.5 odd years, the world has changed significantly in the sense that post-COVID user behavior has seen a tectonic shift towards online platforms, right? Because of multiple lockdowns, because of people not being able to step out, most of their, or rather 90% of their retail needs are met by online platforms and online ads. And therefore, in this space, it's become extremely important for our retail partners to shift significant amount of marketing dollars onto these multiple online platforms, including Google, Facebook, Amazon, and some of the other marketplaces that we see in Southeast Asia. And therefore, with this, as I said, tectonic shift in user behavior, and then, of course, retailers having to shift their marketing budgets and create technologies to be able to reach out to these potential users, we as publishers and yourselves as retail consultants and marketing planners, it's very important for us to stay on top of some of the trends that we're seeing, and also what is the technology in terms of marketing and ad formats that we can offer to our retail partners. From a Google standpoint, we understand that we've got, like when it comes to retail ads and commerce solutions, it can get complicated very fast because we've got 7 different platforms with billion users each, compared to some of the other online publishers that are in the space. And from the previous trainings that we've run around ads and commerce, it's easy for us to run a 1-day or a 2-day session and cram everything within that. But the retention and understanding doesn't happen. It causes more confusion than clarity. So what we thought this year is to pivot our training program to this kind of a structure wherein we deliver bite-sized sessions worth 30 to 45 minutes every week. And we kind of deep dive into or showcase the basics of each and every topic that come under the overall ads and commerce solutions that Google has to offer. And because these are bite-sized sessions, that's why we've named it as Retail Bites. So before I showcase the structure of this program, I just wanted to introduce to you the exec sponsors that we have for this program from Publicis side. So thank you so much, Sapna, Anton, Kaushia, and Abhishek for helping us shape this and taking this on the road. And from our side, it's yours truly. And then I'd let Alan and Jigar introduce themselves.
Yeah, hi folks, my name is Al. I am here in the Singapore office. I've been in Google around 9 years, and spanning that always been connected to Google Shopping in some way between the UK, the Middle East, and for the last 2.5 years, Southeast Asian markets. And over the course of today, I'll be running through a lot of the fundamental concepts of Google Shopping and Google Merchant Center.
Thanks, Al. Jigar?
Yeah, thanks, Al, and thanks, Rehan. Hi, everyone, I'm Jigar. I haven't met most of you, but I'm basically the partner lead for Publicis for the region. So I work very closely with Sapna and team, and that's where the genesis of this entire idea came into being. And like Rehan mentioned, commerce is a key area, and the relevance has only kind of gone up or dramatically shot up because of COVID. So we thought that this will be a good opportunity for us to launch this program with you guys, because Publicis has been extremely leaned on as a partner when it comes to commerce and Google as a platform. Looking forward working with you through this journey of Retail Bytes over the next 9 weeks and post that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jens. If we can quickly move on to the next slide where I can explain the basic structure and the curriculum. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the idea is to deliver 9 modules, each spanning 30 minutes. And that's the USP, that we won't bore you with a 2-hour or a 4-hour training. We'll basically give you the basics of every potential retail concept that Google has to offer within 30 minutes. And then at the end of the program, if you want a deep dive on any specific topic, feel free to tell us, then we can organize more trainings. Also, we've structured this as a competition, and because the idea is to make sure that we are retaining everything that is delivered as part of this program, because we are just on the edge of embarking on the holiday season. So each, and this is how we'll basically create a leaderboard every week. So each module would be followed by a quiz. And when I say a quiz, it will have not more than 4 to 5 questions based on the content that will be covered that very week. So, and it's not going to take more than 5 minutes for you to answer the quiz. So each quiz question that you answer correctly will fetch you a point. So in total, you can, if you get 5 out of 5 answers, then you'll get 5 points for that quiz. Similarly, the attendance will fetch you 1 point. So yeah, that's one easy point to basically get by ensuring that you're attending all the sessions. And then at the end of the program, there would be top 3 winners who would get some cool Google hardware. More to follow on that. If you can move on to the next slide, I'll quickly cover the curriculum. So yeah, over the next 9 weeks, folks, this is what we are planning to cover. So today we'll talk about our feed fundamentals. Now, when you think about retail ad solutions across multiple platforms, not just Google, be it Facebook, Amazon, other marketplaces who are launching their own ads ecosystem, the basic necessity for brands and retail partners is to create a product feed. And without that, any ad solution won't work. So that's why we are here to basically showcase what is a product feed, how can you optimize a product feed, and how can you make sure that you're driving the most for your retail partners. Then we'll talk about Google Merchant Center, which is basically a platform that houses the product feed. So think of Google Merchant Center as what Google Ads is to campaign optimization, search campaign optimization. Google Merchant Center account is to shopping ads optimization. So ensure that you get access to Google Merchant Center of the clients that you're managing. And in this session, we'll talk about how do you set it up, what are some of the policies and disapprovals that you can come across, and what are some of these issues, and how can you alleviate those issues. Then the third week, we'll cover a section on how can you drive online sales for your retail partners through basically automation, in which we'll cover smart shopping campaigns. Then we'll move on to opportunity sizing. Because the holiday season is coming up, it's important for all of us to understand how can you size the relevant opportunity that is available for your retail partners, and then how can you basically drive that opportunity or unlock that opportunity through various ad formats that we have. Now, there's a massive focus on offline sales also. So therefore, all the brick and mortar players who are driving basically retail sales in countries like Australia, Japan, and India, where retail sales are driven by offline traffic, where 90% of retail sales are driven by offline traffic. So it's important for us to understand some of the solutions that Google has to offer in that space from an reporting standpoint, measurement standpoint, and also ad format standpoint. Then one of the most important topics in this space, especially post-COVID, is co-op marketing. I'm sure most of you would have heard about Facebook's CPAS, but we would like to showcase the solution that we've created here in APAC specifically, which is Google Ads with Partners. That is something that you can leverage to drive co-op marketing between sellers and marketplaces, sellers and brands and retailers, and so on and so forth. Then the third last session is around reporting and insights. The second last session will be concentrated on holiday planning because that's extremely timely. And then last session, we'll end by some conversion rate or optimization of how you can ensure that once you lead users to your retailer's website, be it mobile website or desktop website, what can you kind of consult to retailers in order to increase conversion rates? So think about mobile speed, site speed, the whole UX structure, and so on and so forth. So this is the curriculum, and then without further ado, I'll pass the stage to Alan, who will cover the feed fundamentals today. And thank you so much for your patience, and welcome on this journey with us. Alan, over to you.
Cool, thank you, Rehan. Cool, everyone. So we can hop into things, and as Rehan said, we're going to be covering a range of different modules over the next few weeks. Over the next 45 minutes or so, really, where we'll be diving in is again very much the fundamentals of Google Shopping. So looking at things like data feeds, data feed optimization, making sure that accounts are linked correctly. What are the kind of things that you might want to ask of a client who is already set up a GMC, to make sure that you have full visibility and you can make good recommendations, not just on the media side of things, like in the campaigns, but also more in the actual the product feeds themselves, and what's actually going to be building the creatives. So what we'll run through first of all is just a quick kind of level setter. We'll look at some sample ad creatives, make sure we're all on the same page as to what kind of inventory Google Shopping will run on, what kind of accounts we will need to have in place in order to get all of this set up. And then from there, we'll be going into Google Merchant Center itself, which is the account that is used to hold all of our product information. So what does that look like? What are the key things that you're going to want to keep an eye on periodically? And then finally, we'll look at just basic feed optimization. So with the time we have today, we won't be, skilling up to the levels of full like feed agency level optimization audits, but you'd be surprised how effective you can be with a very quick audit if you just know where to look within these feeds. You can really supercharge a feed just by focusing on 2 or 3 things within it for the most part. So I'll outline how to run quick audits for clients. Okay, so first up, folks, we'll just look again like the different inventories in which you can find different Google Shopping ads. So depending on the campaign type that you're running in Google Ads, you will see the ads appear potentially in a number of different places. Now, the most popular shopping campaign type today that is used across the region would be smart shopping campaigns, which is the more automated campaign type from Google that will see you on I suppose maximum reach and maximum inventory across Google surfaces. So whenever we talk around SSC or smart shopping campaigns, where you're going to be able to see those ads will be here on the search engine results pages. So typically this forms the lion's share of any of these SSC campaigns. This is where I would expect you to be getting the majority of traffic. Like in terms of benchmark numbers, if I just look across the Southeast Asia region, I would expect most SSC campaigns to be getting around 80% of their traffic from the SERP or search engine results pages. Now, shopping overall, folks, these ads typically have very good click-through rates. They are built for e-commerce. You cannot run them unless you have a cart and checkout on your website. And they are usually the first things that are placed on a media plan if the goal of the client, if their objective is online sales, online revenue. They are always image-based, and we'll get into how these images are pulled and how this information, such as product title, is formatted within these ad units in a moment. But very visual ads, they take up a lot of real estate, particularly on the mobile landing page, leading to really good click-through rates that are going directly to product pages. So they have to go to a page where there is an add to cart option. And a combination of all of those factors means that conversion rates, again, are strong, and you should be able to generate strong units sold for a client. So roughly 80% of traffic in one of these SSCs will likely be coming from search, but we can also expand then into the Google Display Network. So this could just be desktop websites. It could be within mobile apps as users are browsing. Now, some differences here, folks, would be the nature of the creative itself. Whilst it is still very product image focused. Again, we see the same product images here that we would see within the shopping carousel here on the left. There isn't so much in direct auction or carousel that we will see in these ad units. So taking the example here of Wish, we see all 6 of these product IDs are all coming from the client Wish. Whereas over on the SERP pages, we can see here, for example, that there are 3 different merchants who are all competing in this given auction. So you should be able to see Ted Baker, Eddie Bauer, and then the third one here. So with display, you're able to basically, just like any regular display ad, you're able to take over that entire ad unit. Whereas on search, you're in a carousel where you're likely going to be competing with other merchants. Now again, benchmark numbers, folks, I would say roughly 15% of traffic in an SSC will likely be coming from the display network. And then finally, we have YouTube and Gmail as well. So if any of you are scanning up and down through the YouTube app, you'll likely see carousels again with little product images. Those are all coming from shopping campaigns, both standard shopping and smart shopping campaigns as well. And then we also have Gmail inventory as well. So if a user clicks into their promotional or social inboxes within Gmail, they will have almost like a small text ad towards the top of the inbox. If they were to click on that, that will expand out and you will get like a full product carousel of their items. But main takeaway from here, folks, is that whenever you think of Google Shopping, don't necessarily just think of the search engine results pages, which is traditionally where most shopping ads would have been seen. Remember that this is very much a cross-inventory campaign type and ad format. And its main use case is very much online sales and performance advertising. You would not use Google Shopping for something like mass awareness on a product launch day because it's just not built for that. It is built for users who are making product searches. And that's exactly the type of ad units that we want to hit them with. Display and YouTube would be better served for something like big awareness campaigns. Smart shopping, shopping, be it smart shopping or standard shopping, would very much be the performance campaign type that we'd recommend. Okay, folks, so what we'll look at now is just like what accounts do I actually need to go ahead and set this up. So if your client is going to be interested in driving e-commerce and you think shopping's the way to go, well, what are the kind of fundamental things to bear in mind before you begin to pitch this? So first thing to note is that there are usually, there's definitely going to be 2 accounts involved and potentially up to 3. So the first will be Google Merchant Center or GMC. And this account will not have any billing details associated with it. It will not have any campaign media within it or anything like that. You can think of it as, it's basically an account which will just hold a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet is your product inventory. So if you have a brand that has 5,000 different items, those 5,000 different items can be essentially just placed into a spreadsheet and split among a number of different columns. And we'll look at what a sample spreadsheet looks like in a moment, or a sample data feed. But the function of the Merchant Center is quite basic. It's just to make sure that your product data is up to date, and that is where Google will crawl for your product information. So first and foremost, we need to have one of those in place. Secondly, we then need to have a Google Ads account associated with it. And the Google Ads account itself is where you will associate the billing. It's where you will create campaigns, set bid strategies, keywords, negative keywords, and you will do product segmentation. So I imagine everyone on the call here has probably at least seen the inside of a Google Ads account. You will definitely need that to run shopping. And then finally, we have the measurement platform, which is a little bit different by client, but you may want to link GA360 or SA360 to these campaigns, or perhaps you're using a third party such as, say, Adobe to track performance. Depending on the measurement platform that you're using, some of those can be plugged directly into Google Ads and then used for conversion optimization, such as GA360. Others cannot. So others that track separately, you won't be able to see that information directly in Google Ads. So it's a little bit different depending on the client setup, but I would say for the most part, most clients do link a measurement platform, and they use that data to help them optimize campaigns. And yeah, as I said, data feed, main thing in Merchant Center, Google Ads for our campaign. And the measurement platform is where we will typically review our KPIs. Typical KPIs that I would both sell Google Shopping on and I would review Google Shopping on is typically going to be ROAS, or return on ad spend, is probably the most common. Also just overall revenue. So if there's a particular revenue goal for a client, Google Shopping is very effective in driving that. Or in some cases, just units sold or profitability. Some clients segment campaigns in different ways to drive profitability versus just maximizing revenue. And in the later modules, we will look at what those different campaign segments could look like. So ultimately, we take the inputs from these three accounts, folks. So we take our product information from GMC, we combine that with our bidding and our budget information from Google Ads, and then potentially we have conversion data coming in from, say, GA360. All of that will go into the bidding algorithm, and from there, the campaign will make a decision on whether or not to actually enter ad auctions. So at any given time, there's millions of different ad auctions taking place, globally, in which Google could decide to place ads both on search and both on display. And depending on things like the user intent signals combined with what products are in the campaign and what search query they've entered, that will really determine whether or not we decide to go ahead and place that ad. So as an example, if the bid strategy in a campaign is very, very strict, or it's seeking to be very efficient, let's say you're setting a goal of that campaign to have a return on ad spend of 50 to 1, so very, very high. And the auction that we have is a user who has made a search, for something to do with, say, jobs at Razer. Razer would be a games hardware company. So even if a merchant had those products in stock, if we know that the user search is not necessary to do with the products. So if a user is searching for something like jobs at Razer, then that is a case where we would not serve Google Shopping ads, because it doesn't make sense to serve a product query against something that is obviously related to jobs or careers at a given brand. So one key thing to note with Google Shopping, folks, is that it will only serve against product-specific queries. And those product-specific queries, how we generate, like what keywords to serve against, is really determined by your data feed, and specifically product titles, which again, we'll go into quite a bit of detail on. But we will not be serving Google Shopping ads against every potential query for a product. It's going to be the more product-specific and purchase intent-related ones. Also, I do note that there is a few questions coming in, folks. At this point, I can't click in to answer them, but please do keep firing them in. And if I don't get to them by the end of this call, I'll just jot them down and I can follow up with an email. But please do fire anything you'd like into the chat. Cool, folks. And then coming back to inventories and the differences now in campaign types. As I had mentioned, we have a number of different inventories between search, Google image search, the Google Shopping property, which is essentially an index of all items in a given market. We have web pages and apps, YouTube and Gmail as well. So across all of this inventory, again, there's two major campaign types, or two different types of media within Google Ads that you could use to drive the performance. So we have standard shopping campaigns, sometimes referred to as just regular shopping campaigns. You will see that will grant you most of that inventory. So everything on search, and also expanding into YouTube search and feed as well. Now, do note, folks, that you have additional options within standard shopping whereby you could actually choose to exclude YouTube search and just make it a completely search-based campaign. So if you're dealing with a client that might have very strict, say, brand sensitivity for display, for example, and they could only serve on search, you could use standard shopping, exclude anything on YouTube, and just make sure it's appearing on search. Now, generally speaking, though, if you were asking for my recommendation, which campaign type would I run, I would recommend running SSC, which is by far the chosen campaign type in this part of the world for sure, simply because it will expand you into more inventory. And it's really the display network, folks, where you're going to get the extra boost to performance here. So if we were to run head-to-head standard shopping versus smart shopping, the benchmark figure that we would have internally is that SSC will net you 30% higher revenue than standard shopping campaigns. So whenever we look at all of the head-to-head tests that would have ran for this these campaign types, 30% higher revenue is the benchmark number. And where that's really coming from is dynamic remarketing coming from web and app display. So the beauty of an SSC is that it has the capability to run dynamic remarketing, providing you have audience lists and a dynamic tag in place, which most clients dealing with e-commerce should have, and I imagine will have in place. The SSC will automatically pick that up and just automatically begin remarketing on display. So that 15 to 20% of inventory I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that that is using dynamic remarketing. That's in a display context, that's where you're going to get maximal performance, particularly on e-com. So if you know you had to make a call between these two campaign types, if the goal of that client is performance, revenue, and driving more units sold, it would definitely be SSC because it will grant you a range of different inventory. Okay, so that's just, again, like a little bit of kind of context and an idea as to what's going on in the Google Ads side of things, folks. So that's what the campaigns look like. That's what the inventory that they will go out to serve on will look like. We'll take a step back from that now, and we'll go a little bit more now into the actual construction of the data feed itself and you know, the technical setup, I suppose, of these campaigns. I would just say that Google Shopping would not be, I suppose, the most straightforward campaign type from Google, in the sense that you do have multiple accounts, you know, operating at the same time, and you do have this concept of a data feed. But again, if you know where to look, you certainly do not need any tech background or any tech expertise. Certainly, I do not have one, and I would be quite comfortable auditing feeds and things like that. So you don't need coding or anything like that to understand how data feeds can be optimized. And really, folks, whenever you think of a data feed, I would just always come back to a simple example like this. So the data feed is just going to be a spreadsheet, which could be uploaded literally in an Excel spreadsheet, or it could look a little bit fancier, like in an XML or an API format. But to just grasp the concept of the feed, you can just think of it as a spreadsheet that is broken down into some specific columns. And these columns are required. So if you created, say, half a data feed that only had a couple of these different columns within them, so say just the first 3 or 4, if you tried to upload that to a Merchant Center account, it would just be disapproved straight away. So a data feed requires structured information regarding the products. If the information is not structured in a certain way, you will get disapprovals back at either the product level or potentially the entire feed. Like if you just upload it as an incorrect format, like a PDF, yeah, straight away it won't accept it. But if I started uploading this with obviously incorrect spelling in the product title, yeah, you would also get product level disapprovals there as well. So whenever we think of the feed, we have to note, okay, you're going to have to take a given product, and it can be really anything. It can be anything as advanced as the new iPhone to something as simple as a ballpoint pen. Regardless of what the product is, we're going to need to structure the information about that product in a certain way. So things like the product title, the description, the link to the landing page of the item. The image link would just be as you'd expect, the image of the product itself. Now, availability and price. This obviously refers to, you know, is the product in stock or out of stock on the client's website, and what exactly is the price of the product. Now, availability and price are very important, folks, because we need to make sure that whatever value is entered in the data feed will mirror exactly what is found on the client's landing page. If it is not, you will definitely see a spike in disapprovals, and it is the #1 reason for product downtime globally. So I've seen some attempts, you know, whereby a client will create a data feed manually. Perhaps they only have like 10 items and they manually type out a data feed, which is all good. They go ahead and upload that into GMC. But the problem is that they're not keeping their prices and availability up to date. So the price changes on the website by 10%. They don't update the data feed, and straight away the products would be disapproved. So always have in mind that there is a policy crawler from Google checking the consistency of the information between the website and the data feed multiple times per day. So every time a feed goes up, we are constantly checking, do prices and availability match between the two. Things such as brand and condition are straightforward, folks. So obviously the brand of the product itself, is it new, is it refurbished? And the product type is basically like the classification of the product. So most websites will have a certain, what will be the word, categorization of different items. So they'll have a certain structure to the website. So if it's an apparel website, they probably split things by, say men's, so the gender level first, then they would go one level deeper to the product category. So perhaps footwear, tops, hoodies, etc. And then maybe another level deeper. So, footwear and then sneakers versus formal. So you can begin to build out this hierarchy of products. And basically, whatever hierarchy makes sense for the client would be what we would enter here in product type. But I'll come back to that again a little bit later. But main takeaway again here, folks, is that the data feed, we're just structuring product information in a certain way that Google can understand, and then basically piece all of that together to make an ad creative. If any of you are familiar with Facebook data feeds, they are very, very similar. They're basically the same thing. The only difference would be that the product columns up here are a little bit different. So with the attributes, the column headers, folks, we've already looked at some of the basic ones. These are required. So again, we have to have these in place. Otherwise, the data feed simply will not work. And then as you get fancier and fancier with data feed optimization, you're probably going to get into a stage of looking at advanced attributes, particularly if you're dealing with clients in the apparel vertical. Because apparel, there's a lot of different ways that you can chop up that product information, be it by color, gender, size, etc. And there's actually even more of these now available for apparel. Also, things such as, is our product sold in multi-packs or bundles? Is it on sale, for example, so you can highlight a sales price? Things like GTIN as well, such as this would be the barcode number. These are all extra attributes that we can add in. And the more information we give here means the bigger the ad unit is going to look. And typically, definitely, the better click-through rate you're going to have. If you take an ad unit that is barely got the price and a very short product title within it, versus one that has 4 or 5 images, a price and a sales price, has a product type built in so Google can parse the queries better, you're definitely going to have a better click-through rate. So one of the things that you'll see a feed agency focus on an awful lot is trying to figure out which of these attributes are realistic for a client to go ahead and submit within the feed. Yeah, and then we really just pull all of that together, folks, to build the ad creative itself. So we can see here an example from Canon, and everything you're seeing here within this ad unit is just being pulled in from the corresponding data feed for Canon. So up here, this is just the product title taken from the spreadsheet. We have the price taken again from the feed, the descriptions, and then depending on the structure of the information in the feed, we may be able to generate for them like a drop-down whereby they can go ahead and submit, or they will basically have the user be able to change between different versions of that item. Again, the more work that you put into actually submitting rich data within the data feed, typically the larger the ad unit itself will appear. Okay, so we're now getting into actual data feed within the user interface itself, folks. I don't think many people on this call will have to go through this because it's nearly always going to be on the client side. Because clients own the website, they're the only ones who can really own the GMC. It's very, very rare I would see an agency own the Google Merchant Center account itself, just because they're not going to have access to accounts such as Google Search Console, which is typically used to verify Merchant Center. But with that said, I do think it's important you just know what is going on whenever a new feed is being created. So when a new feed is going up in one of these GMCs, some of the things that will need to be entered will be, first of all, is this a primary feed or a supplementary feed? And the difference here, folks, is that Google will use primary feeds to build the products themselves. We will take that to be like the final source of truth. Most accounts will just have one primary feed, very straightforward. Where you get some differences will be if there's splits by language within an account. So within Thailand, for example, you might see 2 primary feeds, one in English and one in Thai. For the most part, however, it's just a single primary feed. Now, a supplementary feed, you can think of this as almost like a partial data feed. So this is a feed whereby we're probably only submitting 1 or 2 of those columns. And what we're using is we're using the partial feed to pretty much just overwrite certain information in the primary data feed. So where this is very common is we've uploaded our primary data feed, but let's say we're not quite happy with the product titles. We know that we could do better. But the data feed is just being created automatically by the client's website. Now, I think it would be unlikely that you're going to be able to go in and change the content on a client's website. That the amount of sign-offs it would take would be huge. So these primary feeds are often just being automatically created on a daily basis. They're just crawling a client's landing page, parsing all of that into the spreadsheet, and then sending it off to Google. But if you've got really poor product titles, or you know that they could look a lot better, what you as an agency could do is write a supplementary feed just using a Google spreadsheet or using Excel. You could pick out here the 5 products that I want to update the product title for. You upload a supplementary feed into GMC, and then you can basically set that to overwrite certain information in the primary feed. Some agencies do this as quite a significant value add for their retail clients, where they will go in and, if a client has 500 products, they will pick out the top 10% and they will optimize the product titles, description, and say the product type. And they will just do that through simple Excel. They will just, manually type out what they think would be better and upload that into GMC. At no point is any coding involved or anything like that. So you again wouldn't need any sign off or access to the website. You can do all of this within GMC. Secondly, folks, we have country of sale. And as the name suggests, this is just like for this given data feed, where exactly will the products be going on sale? And Google just uses this to verify things like currency. So if you're submitting a data feed in USD and your country of sale is Singapore, there's obviously a discrepancy there. So Google would give you a warning as you go to progress here to say your currency will not match the country of sale. And input methods, which we'll look at in a moment. The input method is quite important, folks, just to, again, just understand how the client submits data. So you have a number of different ways whereby you can upload information into GMC. You could manually upload it literally by just clicking, new feed, upload this file from your desktop, which is fine if you're dealing with really small clients whose prices don't change very often. But if you're dealing with a marketplace client or a retailer who's got hundreds of thousands of products, you're going to definitely have to look at a fancier method, probably something like Content API, which is extremely fast. Content API just means as soon as something changes on the client's website, the data feed will reflect that. So you've got instant upload. Definitely high-end clients will opt for that for the most part. More kind of torso clients will typically use something like a URL crawl, which just means that they have an API running on their website, which is creating this data feed once every 24 hours. They then just host that data feed on a URL on their website, and then Google crawls that URL. So client just takes all of the product information, places it on a file, and tells Google, crawl that file every day, and that would really be it. If you're running into a lot of feed issues with clients, it's definitely a question I would ask would be what means of I suppose data feed uploads do you use? And yeah, here we see this, but if you were to click next after that slide, folks, you'll see these are the different options. So Google Sheets is literally a pre-formatted spreadsheet from Google with all of those different column headers that we just saw. So ID, title, description, etc. And the client can just go ahead and manually type them in. You'd really only see that on very, very small clients. Small in the sense that a small amount of SKUs. If you only have less than 10, it's going to be very easy to keep a spreadsheet up to date, particularly if the prices don't change very often. it would be impossible to do if you had hundreds of items, because there's no way you're going to be able to stay on top of the availability and the price changes of those items. At least for the most part. Perhaps there are some clients that are quite static, and it might still be a good option. Schedule fetch is, again, the option whereby Google is just told this is the particular URL that you have to crawl, and then Google will just go ahead and take that at a given time every day. Upload is a little bit more in-depth. It's whereby the client is rather than hosting it on a specific URL, is just sending it to Google via file transfer protocol. So basically they're just almost like emailing the data feed to a different storage server, and then Google just goes in and takes it from there. So schedule fetch and upload are quite similar. Both require the data feed to be exported somewhere, and then Google has to take it. And then finally, Content API. Again, the more advanced option. This is server to server. It requires integration with GMC. Typically, you're going to have webmasters or perhaps client engineers involved to set that up. We won't really look at that, folks, just because it would take 2 days to run through all of the tech details. But again, you really wouldn't have to check any of this, certainly not troubleshoot it. But as an agency, I think it would be important to at least know which one of these options they are using. Okay, so data feed registration, folks, and this one is quite important if you are dealing with clients that are perhaps launching new products regularly and they need to have an item online at a given time. Perhaps it's for like a smartphone launch or something like that, or they are about to have a major website overhaul and they're changing the URL. All of the products are going to get updated to a new URL, things like that. This will definitely impact serving in Google Ads and can really mess around with your performance stats. So just so you note how Google reviews these feeds and products, if it is a brand new data feed that has never been uploaded before, it will definitely take 3 days for that to be fully processed. And the reason it's taking 3 days is really the images take a while to be crawled. And we're also running basic editorial checks to make sure that things like the product title make sense. So if the client is uploading new feeds regularly, it's really not optimal. You want to be using the same file all the time, so like the same spreadsheet all the time. If you're chopping and changing between different feeds, you're going to be adding a lot of processing time unnecessarily. Now, within the feed itself, if we are just using the same, say, spreadsheet all the time, let's say we're just updating things like product titles and descriptions, do note that it is not instantaneous. It again will take up to 24 hours. Because these are more cosmetic changes, but they will affect the editorial and the look of the ad itself, we will need to, again, run just basic editorial checks. So anything that you can see directly within the ad unit, like the product title, the image, the description, is something that's going to take a little bit longer. Now, price and availability are very dynamic because, depending on the client, you could have prices changing multiple times per day. For the most part, this is very quick, usually less than 60 minutes, like less than 15 minutes really for the most part. It should be very, very quick. As soon as the feed is uploaded, again, our systems will begin crawling price and availability straight away. Worst case scenario would be in gigantic feeds that are going up through spreadsheets, can take up to 6 hours, but would be quite rare. It's not many clients that have feeds of that size running through spreadsheets. But yeah, as soon as the data feed goes up, really I'd expect price to be updated quite quickly. Okay, so with the GMC accounts themselves, folks, one important concept to note is the concept of URL claiming and verification. And the reason for this is the way Google has set out shopping is that really only the brand owner, the company themselves, should be able to own and place items on Google Shopping. If we didn't have that in place, you would just have anyone and everyone potentially appearing for like Nike.com on Google Shopping. Anyone could just send ads anywhere. And like, whilst there isn't much logic in that, because why would you pay money to send traffic to different brands? It would make things very difficult for reporting. So with that in mind, a GMC account, you can only have one Google Merchant Center account per URL. So if I have Nike.com, there will only be a single Merchant Center globally that is actually capable of holding Nike.com and directing traffic to it. You will not be able to run two at once. You can get into things like MCC structures and like sub URLs like nike.com/SG/TH. There is room for maneuvering there, but generally speaking, one URL per GMC is the rule of thumb. Now, how we make sure that that's going on is this concept or this process of URL verification. And all it really means, folks, is that whoever is setting up the GMC account needs to be an admin on either Google Search Console or Google Tag Manager for that URL. So Search Console and GTM, they are like, I suppose, almost authorized at the URL level. Like you can't have multiple Search Console accounts for a website. There is just one Search Console and one GTM verified for again, say Nike.com. So what Google looks for is a common email address between either Search Console or Google Tag Manager and then this merchant account. And that's why it's often the clients who will own these accounts, because they will typically have access to GTM and Search Console, and then they are the ones who will have to set up and claim these URLs. Now, again, from an agency point of view, like why this would be important is that not very often, but multiple times over the year, I will see these like escalation threads whereby a GMC account just flatlines overnight, and we can't find out anything that has gone wrong in the data feed, or the products are all the same, the prices are all matching and things like that. Yet the account just flatlines and goes offline. And the most common reason for that is whenever the link between the GMC and the Search Console or the GTM account is broken as well. So usually, like, someone in the company leaves, their email address is taken offline, and then this active link of the email address between those two accounts is broken, and you would lose the claim on the URL. Google can't see a common user between these two accounts. It cuts the line, and the entire GMC is taken offline. So I hope no one on the call ever has to deal with an issue like that. But if you ever see a big red banner in GMC which says URL claim has been lost, more often than not, it means that this common email address has been severed, and the client will have to go in and re-add an email address. Users and access levels, folks, this is very, very similar to Google Ads in that we have admins, standard, and then email only. Admins can basically do whatever they want, and they can add and remove users. Standard users can do pretty much whatever they want. They just can't add or remove anyone. So they can go in and do any optimization they would like, but they're not going to be able to boot anyone off the account or add new users. And email only would be, as the name suggests, just capable of getting updates on the account. I would strongly recommend, if you are dealing with a client on GMC, to at least be able to get standard level access. So I can understand clients might be apprehensive to grant admin, but I would definitely be seeking standard user access if I was working with an agency. You're going to want to be able, folks, to go in and check certain tabs like diagnostics and the feed settings, particularly if you want to optimize performance for them. There's so much of the performance that is coming from Google Ads is dictated by GMC that I would definitely see it as vital for a performance manager in an agency being able to see how my data feed is doing. And standard user access would be a perfect option for them. Just moving quickly on, the final steps in GMC, folks, just in terms of setup, would be there is the option to upload basic business information. So depending on what we enter for our business display name in GMC, it will affect the ad unit in the sense that it will update the name of the merchant here. The reason that this may or may not be important to some clients is some like to have regional business names. So like as an example, like Sony Thailand, Sony Vietnam, Sony Singapore. And how they would go about that is just updating business display names. Rare enough, though, to be honest, most clients would just want the overarching brand name. Within the same tab, we can also upload some of the initial brand colors and their logos. So if we think back to that example from Wish, you can see the kind of light blue background to this ad unit. That can be dictated in GMC. Within that business information section, you can upload, again, main color and accent, and it will give you the little range. And you just pick whichever color code you would like, or whichever corresponds to the brand's corporate guidelines. And the logos as well. So we have square and rectangular. These are optional, folks, but highly recommended. Some of those ad units that are on the display network will absolutely pull in logo or will want to pull in the logo. So I would highly recommend making sure at the very least the square logo is there. Otherwise, you would be sacrificing inventory because the Smart Shopping campaign won't have all of the creative assets it needs to serve on all websites. So that can be a missed trick whenever just things like the logo aren't uploaded in GMC. Okay, folks, so that's the fundamentals of just setting up one of the accounts. So we have things like URL verification and claiming. We have country of sale and the types of different data feed uploads ranging from extremely quick to somewhat slower and more manual. And then we have the final kind of tweaks like business information in GMC. The next couple of slides will look at specifically data feed optimization. So some companies, all they do is feed optimization. They aim to make feeds quicker with more information. And if the client, has the budget to spend on that, many of those feed agencies do very, very good jobs. And the benefit of one of the feed agencies is just that they'll do it on an ongoing basis. So they'll constantly be trying to improve performance. But most clients are quite happy, like if their feed is already in a good space and there isn't a huge amount of disapprovals, then a periodic audit, maybe once every 6 months, is all that may be required. And again, you don't need really fancy tech to give back pretty chunky recommendations on feeds themselves. So I'll just outline the key things within a data feed, folks, that I would look for. If you're dealing with a client that has hundreds of thousands of SKUs, it's just a case of focusing on maybe the top 5 to 10% of those SKUs and whittling it down, because for the vast majority of clients, how they build 3 or 4 items will be symptomatic of how they build everything. So if they've got very short product titles, in their top selling SKUs, it's very likely that the majority of their SKUs have short titles that need optimization. Similarly, if they've got fairly low res images in the item, the first couple of products that you look at, I expect most of their products are fairly low res. So I don't expect anyone to go in and be checking like thousands of SKUs. But how I would do it is just filter by clicks, which you can do in GMC. You can go into the feed section and just filter by the number of clicks the product has got. Take the top 5 or 10, and that's at least your starting point for figuring out, are they well optimized? If there was one takeaway I would recommend, keeping in mind from this call, folks, it is that the number one thing to focus on in data feed optimization is product title optimization. Google will place quite a heavy emphasis in terms of, it will factor and weight the product title quite heavily into whether or not it's actually going to serve in ad auctions. So if you have a product title that is got a lot of terms within it, it's like having more keywords. If you have a very short product title that is only 2 or 3 characters long, you have very little chance of serving. Google will be looking at product title as its source of keywords for the most part. We look at a number of other factors as well, but it's the easiest one to optimize. So in the example here, we see the dress here. This would be a well-optimized product title because it is referencing a number of different product attributes, such as obviously the category of product, that it's a mini dress, it's got the color in black, and it's got the size in medium, and crucially, it's got the brand Caroline Constas at the top as well. So this is telling Google a lot of information about that product, and it's going to make it very easy for Google to make a decision to actually, or for Google to figure out what queries are relevant to serve that ad against. If we were to take out the brand title and say the color and size, there's a lot less information, and Google won't be able to make as good a call on whether or not it's good to serve. And this would just be, I suppose, a matrix here, folks, of the different recommendations by different verticals. So if you're dealing with a client in apparel, you can see that there's a lot of different recommendations that we would look to build in. If it's in electronics, again, we're looking for always brand at the front, then the main attributes. So if it was like a Samsung Galaxy, it would be referencing probably the size of the screen, perhaps if there's differences in the size of the battery within it, or the memory within it, and the color for sure will be very common. So here in the Samsung example, it's a TV. We're referencing that it's LED, it's 4K, curved screen, and then this would probably be the SKU number or the barcode number. Really here, folks, it's just a case of taking the client's top products, and you're obviously going to know what vertical that they're operating in, and then just referencing their top selling items. I only have about 3 slides left, folks, so if these are okay, I should be able to wrap this up by 3 minutes past. If not, next week anyway, I can pick up with a quick recap. But just the additional attributes, description would be very straightforward in the sense that the description, you have a lot of characters. In product title, you have 150, and I would definitely recommend trying to input as close to 150 as possible. With description, you have 5,000, so you have a lot more room to maneuver and give Google a lot more information. Now, do note though that Google doesn't place as heavy an emphasis on the terms entered here, because product title is typically where you're going to have to give us the critical information on the product. But I would definitely be shooting for descriptions of at least 500 characters or more. Images are very straightforward in that we just want to make sure that they are sharp against ideally a white background, and usually hitting somewhere in the region of 800 by 800, although they do differ a little bit by category as well, folks. Like in the case of apparel, we do accept a lower quality of image. The only thing to note here, folks, is that you do not want to be submitting product images that have watermarks or promotional overlays like 20% off or the brand logo pasted on top of the product. That is a huge reason for product disapprovals in this part of the world as well. So whenever the client is building their feed, definitely recommend that they should have clear, crisp images against how would you say, like a white background or a consistent background. You can also upload additional image links. So it is just the product, but likely just taken from a number of different angles as well. And this is just to help with click-through rate. It's going to give the users additional choice in terms of the way that they can see that product. So many retailer websites will shoot a product from multiple angles, and you could submit all of that within the data feed as well. And then finally, folks, one that is very often missed out on in certainly in Southeast Asia is GTIN, or Global Trade Item Number, and this is just the barcode number of the product itself. So if you're dealing with a brand who's manufacturing the items, they will definitely have access to these numbers somewhere within their company. They may just have to ask a merchandising team to actually go ahead and provide them. But if you submit GTIN numbers within the data feeds, you will essentially get a boost within the auction, because we know that Google knows it takes extra effort to submit these. And once Google has the GTIN numbers, we can cross-reference them with online databases to figure out exactly what that product is. So as soon as we have this number and it's submitted for like an iPhone, we can cross-check that against registered numbers or registered product information online, and we'll be able to figure out everything from the weight of the item to the color that it's sold in to the screen size. And we use all of that to make the query serving even better, because we'll have access to pretty much all product info. If we do not have GTINs within the data feed, we just have to rely on what we have in the data feed itself, like the merchant provided information, which is still pretty good. But merchants can very frequently forget to submit important elements of the product. So GTIN, folks, if you're dealing with manufacturers of products, I would definitely check if they're in data feeds. And if not, it's a really low-hanging fruit to boost performance and probably get a cheaper CPC quite quickly. Okay, folks, so just in the interest of time, I'm going to wrap up there. I saw a number of Q&A in the chat, which unfortunately I couldn't get to now, but I'll jot them down and just send them on afterwards. Yeah, I am pretty sure Rehan definitely recorded it, so he'll be sending this on for sure. But I'll do a quick recap of this next week as well, folks, in the next session. So again, we can just cover the key takeaways. But yeah, I think I might hand back over to yourself, Sugar.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Al. Yes, everyone, thank you for joining the first one. As Al mentioned, we'll obviously follow this up with a recording deck, as well as answering the questions that everyone put forward. and any other details that would be required by you guys. And we'll see you for the next one on next Friday. The next one is going to be a 30-minute one itself. So it's going to be crisp, and actually the ones all going forward will be 30 minutes. So that's going to be the format coming up. All right. With that, I think thank you everyone. And
Thanks, Junior. Thanks, Al. Sorry, what's up?
I said anything that you want to add?
No, that's great. I think we'll just follow up with the questions and send the recording and the document, and then we'll just do it next Friday again. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Junior.
Just a quick one, folks. Sorry, I can't get into the questions just because I'm in a room. If anyone could just copy them down and just.
I've done that. I'll have done that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Happy Friday. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.